Hello, hello. Can you hear me? It's being recorded already, and you're not even here. Hi there. I can't hear you. Wait a minute. Can you hear me now? Can I hear you? No, I'm not hearing you. The little lines next to your name are yellow instead of green. Gosh. Hold on.
Okay, is that any better?
All right. Now I hear you.
Okay,
Yay.
well, my mic was off. Not
Oh,
on Zoom, but my mic was off. Thanks for catching that. I was just saying
you have a
I was
mic?
my mic.
Oh, is that
was-
new?
No, no, no. I bought it.
I need to get one of those. I need to get one of those.
I bought it several years back because I wanted the sound of the tuning forks to come over more authentically.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I just have to remember to change original sound on Zoom so that it catches the
Yeah.
actual sound. But it's also helpful for interpreting.
Yeah, I bet. I've heard that actually is what allows the sound to work. Like, I've played my crystal triangle, and the people can't hear it, and that's why they're telling me. Yeah,
Yeah,
so I should get one of these days.
laptops are not made for musicians, or people
Apparently not.
who do frequency healing work. So how are you? You wanted to talk about allodial title today, and
Yes.
what
Yeah,
would you like
because what's
to
going
talk
on in
about
North
the
Carolina,
title?
I've heard in yeah, are is it recording? Okay, can so we can edit out all the pre whatever if we need
Yeah,
to?
yeah, we
Yeah,
can. Hi, everybody.
all right.
Well, we're talking about
Okay.
allodial
Yeah.
today.
I mean, I don't think yeah, I think it would be a good idea because like, I get frustrated with videos where people go on and on about irrelevant stuff, but maybe that's just me. I don't know. Anyway, yeah, I wanted to talk about this because I learned that in well, everything that's going on in North Carolina, the the lithium, and I know that there has been and so this is the thing that happens when there's a truth that's going on and then of course the rumors start and then people get really crazy with the extremeness of some claims or some of the things that they're talking about, and so then the debunkers and the fact checkers go in and they choose the most extreme and debunk whatever component of that is easy to debunk because it is extreme and it's exaggerated, and then somehow the rest of it gets shoved into the trash and people just for some reason seem to forget the whole thing. And so there is lithium in that area. It's very rich not only in lithium but also in quartz crystal and other minerals. And so this really is a thing. It is much desired by the powers that shouldn't be or the powers that were, however we want to call it. Um, but that's the whole recognition of, "Oh, guess what? China's not the only entity that has access to rare earth minerals." There in North America, we are very rich in rare earth minerals, and I don't know if you and I had talked about this before, but the fires that are burning out in the Midwest, I think it's the Utah, I think it might be Utah, but there's a whole swath of private forest land that has been burning, And this happened a massive fire started right around the time that Hurricane Helene was, you know, abating and all the devastation was coming out and people were rushing to help and all the attention was focused there. But then there's this huge fire burning and well, it just happens to be burning conveniently over an area of that has been was discovered in early 2024 to contain a massive amount of rare earth minerals, a much larger cache, I guess you could call it, than anything that has been discovered anywhere else in the world. And that's only a piece of the pie. There's so much more here potentially. And so the Geological Survey of the United States corporate government has made a plan that they are going to be sending out, I believe it's unmanned surveillance drones with the ability to take kind of like an MRI of Earth, going down up to 3,000 feet below to discover and map all of the areas across all of America where there are these deposits of whatever minerals. And so they're going to be flying these aerial patterns all across the country for the next like year and a half to 2 years. And knowing how, these entities behave, whenever they see something that they think is can be commercialized, they want it. And so that literally opens the door for any area across the country to fall under, the targeting eyeball of mm, convenient weather disasters and convenient chemical spills and anything that might potentially get the people off the land so that, oh, now that they can declare this area a biohazard or whatever it is, and then swoop in with eminent domain because eminent domain has been the tool that the deep state, these corporate bankers, all of the entities that have been trying to control and commercialize all parts of life have used historically. And so what when I learned about that and I began to do a little bit of research, and I haven't fully researched all of the tentacles, but because as with anything, nothing is as it seems, nothing is as simple as what the surface is. There needs to be a lot more information gathered about that, and also that that information needs to be shared widely with people. But to me, the way to deal with situations like that is, first of all, it's really important that people become a state national so that they themselves become sovereign in their, their own person, taking back all of their legal title to every identity, to every straw man, to every contract, whatever, putting yourself in that place where you have the power to say yes or no to contracts. But then the second step is to do the work to claim allodial title to all of your land, because that allodial title also renders the land sovereign to the individual, because the word allodial title itself, and I'm just going to read this. Allodial title is ownership of real property, which is land, buildings, etc., that is independent of any superior landlord. And so the concept of allodial title itself is related to land held in allodium, or land ownership by occupancy and defense of the land itself. So this is part of the common law jurisdiction. So common law is in public law, as in law, not legal. So this is a really important thing for people to pay attention to, because this is one area where we can reclaim our rights. And to me, this feels like, yes, there's a lot of places that people need to figure out how to fight those fights, like, driving your car, traveling, the registration and the vehicles. Yes, but what about your land? What about your home? Right now, as pretty much everything could be up for grabs with these entities, the deep state. And if people do not have that security, you can be a state national and that's fine, and you're sitting here and you have property and you're paying property taxes. Well, technically you are renting because you have not claimed title in the proper way that moves it out of their jurisdiction. And so I feel like this is something that more and more people need to be made aware of, and to do whatever steps need to be taken. Now, here in the eastern part of America, because the colonies and the states here were first. So this goes back well before, like, say, California, because the whole with all of the history, the true history that happened, the 13 original colonies were here in the East. And so this goes back to original deeds that were granted by the king. But also we have to take into account I don't wanna say deeds because I'm sure that's not the right term, but the native tribes here who agreed with, the white settlers to, "Okay, you can go ahead and take this land, and, we'll receive, whatever it is in exchange for it, and we wanna also be able to walk the land and continue to hunt and do what we've always done." Because I think that they never really understood the full concept of what the white people viewed as land ownership, because that was a foreign concept to them. And so I feel like it's very important when you're designing your process for allodial title, you need to take into consideration both, not just a foreign king who really didn't have any right to give away the land that wasn't his in the first place. However, in that jurisdiction, certainly that's accepted as being valid, but we need to take into consideration both sides of it. Does that make sense?
It makes sense, and I'm glad that you brought it back round to that because the idea of ownership of the land is tricky when you believe that, um, I know that it gets sticky, that people start throwing around words like socialism and communism and capitalism when we're talking about utilizing the land on the planet that we were all born on. Um, it rights and responsibilities, um, it, previous use of land, who truly has the authority and the right to be able to be anywhere that they want to be, and simultaneously feel safe and feel like we're utilizing the land in such a way that's respectful to the land, that's helpful to human beings, that's helpful to community building and unity building, that is also in support of this idea that we are really creating the experience by our thoughts that we are going to be having. And so the tricky part about coming from where we've come from and moving to where I believe most of us want to be is not falling into those patterns of defensiveness and fear, not just around what um, has happened and what we're seeing happen, and then the fear that insinuates itself into what could happen, but seeing what has happened and making a different choice about how we're thinking about it so that what we're creating is not just, truly is a multidimensional approach to creation, is comprehending our power, thinking about it in a positive way, and then taking physical action to support the direction that we want to move into. And so, whether or not people want to become American state nationals, of course, you and I think that that's the way to go. That's what we have done. But how do we
Yep.
truly participate? How do we truly participate in a way that, right now, so many people are so about voting, and I comprehend where
Mm,
that's coming from and why that is in existence. But if you're truly wanting to participate, then you have to participate. If you're truly wanting your voice to be heard, then you need to participate locally. And so American state nationalism foundationally is about living in respect and living in honor and living in peace. It's why we fly the peace flag, and separating
Yep.
out the predators and what they have done and the rules and regulations that they've created in the last several hundred years
Right.
here in the States, moving forward in a way that we are trying to comprehend how to work truly not from the programs, but in peace, and exploring what allodial titles exist historically for the land that you are occupying right now. And what do you, and I agree,
Yep.
what do you want to write into those contracts, right? How do you want to
Yep.
be able to use the land that's in a way beneficial to
Mhm.
you, and not just about owning as much as you can and polluting it to the best of your
Owning
ability,
as
but being
Right.
some
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
heir of the land and works with the land
Mhm,
as a
mhm.
sentient being for all
Yep.
of our, for to
Right.
support all of our potential. Yeah, it's a great
Yeah,
conversation,
absolutely.
and it's important. It's
Well, I
important.
feel like
So, how did you, Ken, how did you start? How did you start the process for the allodial title for the land that your family has been on for a while?
so the first step is you start from the present and you work backwards. And this is what when someone's buying a house in that jurisdiction, which of course most of us don't use gold yet. At some point down the road we probably will, but in that jurisdiction it involves the a bank and a title search that a lawyer does. And what they do is they go now it's pretty much online. The most depending on where you're at, most of the most current deed information is online and it's searchable online in whatever registry of deeds is local to the county that you are in. You would do a search online and you start with the most current title and you just what I did is I just created this little chart and I started with right now, okay, what was the deed that brought me and my family here? And so for me, I took my piece of land because my mom 20 years ago had carved off 30 acres of the 80 that we have here and deeded it to me. And so I start with that. So I just go in and I record the book and page, where it's found, what the consideration was. In this case, it was, I think, something minimal because it was a gift. And so then I look to the one before that. What was the deed that granted my mom? And so that was when my dad and she got divorced and he gave it to her. And so again, book and page, consideration, when, and then you just work backwards. And it's really easy when you start in the present, really, really easy. But the further back you go, the harder it is to find because then we're talking, okay, so then 5 acres prior to that, it was actually 50. And that 50 acres prior to that, maybe 100 years ago, was actually 500 acres. And then prior to that, it was
Oh, yeah, and
enormous. And then it goes all
I
the way
just
back to the deed from the king.
I just want to say this. I just learned this. Where did I just learn this? I may have learned this in interpreting, in which case I'm not supposed to talk about it, but I'm going to talk about it. And I'm not going to talk about where. So
Well, you don't have to give details, just give
I will try to the best of my ability to
yeah,
give as many details as possible without breaking confidence to anybody.
yeah,
Um, there was a
yeah.
conversation about a locality, an entire state's worth of locality, where someone was trying to research birth certificates to look for information. And what they found in their research was that the state, for about 5 years, had a practice in the 1800s, of just for 5 years, they were like, we can't store all this. We don't have the place to store all this. So let's just burn everything. They burnt everything. As a practice, the state burnt all historical birth certificates to get rid of them. And as I was hearing this, I was just like, and I don't think I was actually actively interpreting at this point, but I was still there as an interpreter. Again, why I'm trying to be as vague as I can with including as much information as possible. Um, I found that absolutely fascinating. And it made me, of course, wonder about motivations. And was it truly about space? Was
Mhm.
it really about having the space to
Yep.
store stuff? Or was it about the erasure and the ability to manipulate and control how people see things and what people have access to? So that's all I'm going to say about that. I feel like that's enough information to just, start doing some
Yeah.
investigation the state that you're on.
Right.
And what was the historical
Right.
practice? Was it a township, right? Was it a local
Yep.
county practice, or truly
Yep.
was it the entire state? Where are those? Because it is true that when you start looking at the history, and now I don't own land. I have no desire to own land. Maybe that has to do with the fact that, I'm here as a first generation American. My parents came out
Yep.
of Europe. But even there, even like the idea of going someplace and owning a piece of property is not something that I'm interested in. I don't care where I am. I want to be able to be safe and be respected and live freely and to the best of my ability in honor and in service to the whole planet figuring this out. So it doesn't really matter where I am. I appreciate the idea of being able to be transient. Um,
Yep. Yeah, and that's
and
great. That's great.
still and still people who don't
Mhm.
want that transience, who want that feeling of more
A
of
and
permanent,
that's me. Right.
right?
Right. Right.
Have
I
right
need to have
to do
that.
that.
I need to feel right, because I mean, because I have livestock, so I need to have a safe place for them. I can't be just in the wind. So, yeah, everyone's coming from a different perspective, but we do need to, I think, collectively get the land out of the potential clutches of those who just want to rape it and use it to harvest whatever natural resources are there. And so this is
So
the first step. And so
okay. So you did the research, you started present, and you went back and you found that
I
paper
started. Right.
contract.
I
And
went
then
back farther and farther. Now I'm still in the process of going all the way back because it is now I've gotten to the point of where now the records are so old in the early 1800s that they are stored hopefully in boxes somewhere in the archives of whatever county, and I'm actually working with Ron right now and a couple other people because this is a group effort. And we're going to eventually get to the original land grant, which was granted from the king in the early 1600s for that side of it. And that I believe is stored in probably one of the archive locations in Boston. But that is going to cover everyone that is within the enormous chunk of land that originated here. So it's going to be so a lot of these documents, the earlier documents, the further back you go, those are going to cover more and more people and more properties. So everyone can use that same piece. So and that's the side of the legal side, but then also we already have access to all the information whereby the sachems of the local tribals, the tribal people had granted the land to the settlers. So we have that side already. That's easy public record. We've already pulled it and we already have that. It's the legal piece that we have to get it so we can come together. Once that process is done and the paper trail has been created, that's our chain of title. And so that's a term that is used by lawyers when they're doing this research to allow people to purchase a house. And just an FYI, they typically don't go back further than 50 years. So, if there is an actual cloud on the title, like there was a question years and years ago, they're not going to find it. They're not going to uncover that. So,
so what do you do?
the ownership of homes, well, I mean, people don't even know. People haven't addressed it. But that makes them exposed to potential claims that they actually like that's not really their property. And I think many people just are not aware of that. They assume that when they're getting a loan for a mortgage, do their closing, their deed gets recorded, they move into their new house, they're safe. Not necessarily, because the process has not gone back further. And if somebody comes forward, you know, my family owned that property and it was stolen from us 200 years ago, and I have proof, they're not going to be able to provide the actual a superior claim, because what it comes down to is you want to establish your evidence so that you can present an ironclad claim of superiority, that you are really the real living man or woman that has the superior claim to this particular property. And so that's what this process is about. So first it's getting all your paperwork, it's getting your chain of title going all the way back. The second step is that you create your own deed whereby you write in whatever language is recognized as taking a allodial title. And there's scripted formats, which I have not gotten to that point yet. But when I do, I will certainly make sure that I utilize the proper language, because remember, language has been used and weaponized against us with terminology and formatting and syntax, which actually favors the deep state and the legal processes that they have used to manipulate us for so long, and not knowing what the proper way of speaking and writing is has made us vulnerable to, them doing whatever it is they do with legal immunity. And so it's going to be very important to make sure that the deed wording is correct. But then the next step after you have those two pieces of paper is you're going to put it on the public record for 60 days to give anyone else out there who may have superior claim the opportunity to step forward and prove it. Now, the burden of proof is on them, it's not on you. And you already have your evidence because you've created your chain of title and you have stated your claim. And now you have put it on the public record. So they must prove that they have superior claim. And so they must have the jurisdictional right to do that as well. Like, I can't just say, no, I don't believe you. I have to be the one who is speaking for myself that I have superior claim over you. I can't just come in and say, no, you don't have claim to it. You're actually, it's not really rightfully yours. One of your ancestors actually stole that from, you know, old Martha as she was dying or whatever. And old Martha
So
is
we're
was somebody
seeing
that I
that.
knew.
We're seeing that type of behavior, the reinvention and the obfuscation and the lying and the
Yep.
recreation, right? The recreation and the imposition of that recreation on truth before that. So how, if
Yep.
you have exhausted, if you're looking at your historical, like the documentation for the way that that land has been passed on, and you
Yep.
get to like a wall because you only have up to this point, wouldn't someone else who perhaps steps forward later, wouldn't their paperwork or their documentation, shouldn't it also exist in that same place that you've been looking? Isn't there a repository that
It
should
should.
have it? So if someone were to spontaneously pop up and say, "Oh no, your great great grandfather stole it from my great great grandfather and I have the
Yep.
proof." Well, where did that proof come from? Where has it been sitting all this time? Why is it not kept where it should be kept? Why is that information not kept where it should be kept? Was it one of those fires and it
Mhm.
sort of disappeared? Um, as happens both legitimately and illegitimately. Um, so how does that, who then, if there's dispute, how does that then get resolved?
Well, that would be where the courts of the jurisdictional courts would come in. And so it would be living men and women make that decision. And again, the deep state has created all of these layers of things out there to present barriers from us actually, coming together to have our keep our rights. And
Mhm.
so, to my knowledge, this has not happened, but
Mm.
I anticipate that it will, of course. But so that's why it's important that people begin now, to begin thinking about it, begin doing a little bit of research, and then, the more people that come forward that do this process, we're going to eventually put ourselves back in the place where we belong as living men and women who are sovereign on this land. And then we can figure out how do we work collectively. But the point is to just make people just need to be they need to have a protective mindset, I feel, especially considering all of the crazy stuff that's going on. And this is not coming from a place of fear, but instead it's knowing that I
No,
want to
no,
empower myself so I don't have to worry about my
it's
security.
coming from an awareness and an intuition and a knowingness about how the deep state works, how the jurisdiction of
Mhm,
land, air, at municipal jurisdictions, how they have functioned in order to usurp our
mhm.
authority. That's not, I think that
Yep,
that's not from fear. That is about ta honestly taking an assessment and working with what you
yeah,
have. At the same time,
yeah,
you are investing your mental and emotional energy in seeing the way through. And you're also in these
mhm,
times of insanity, in these times of falling, in these times of systems falling and crumbling, and assertion of um uh how do I want to say this? Assertion of a false god, assertion of a false authority,
yep,
pushback, right? From
yep.
the de facto against the
It's
de jure.
color of law.
Yeah.
It's all
Yeah.
pushback, which is color of law. It is this usurped authority that they have taken. And eminent
Yes.
domain is a perfect example of the usurpation of authority. That is absolutely color of law. That is a legal process. It is not lawful. And so people have allowed that. They have allowed these corporate entities over the years to seize private land and designate it for something, the public good. Well, guess what? They actually don't have the right to do that. But that has not stopped them over the years, but only because people are not aware of the realities. That is
Right, because
you cannot do that.
they
Right.
trust the de jure because it's presented itself as if it's the authority and as
Mhm.
if it is looking out for the people's best interest. That's that's the veil, right? That's the veil that they've pulled over people's eyes. And so people are still functioning
Yep.
within the system as if it's telling the truth, as if it's the right thing. I cannot tell you how many times
Yeah.
I just like my brain is sort of doing this, like I don't even know how. I am not quite sure how to deal with how often the concept of democracy is thrown around and the
I
belief
know.
that democracy is about supporting the people.
I
The
know.
difference
I
between
know. It's just
the
it's
difference
so
between democracy and the republic, the difference between like, oh, don't you want to support a democratic way of life? No, not really. I don't want mob rules.
no.
And
No,
even
no,
when
no, I
if
don't
you
you
do
don't want a popularity contest. Right, right. You want your
investigation,
you want the recognition that we are that the greatest minority that exists is the person, the individual. And that is what the Republican form of government recognizes and honors. A democracy is all about the majority. No, I'm sorry. Your rights do not depend upon what the most popular opinion is. Rights are rights. That is being sovereign. And so yes, that has been just so completely. I mean, that's how they got away with COVID. People as
it
thinking, "Oh, well, yes, I'm going to take one for the team. I'm protecting you." All of that rhetoric, which is so anti-sovereign, and that people
well,
just have
so
not been able to see that.
I think that I would like to pick that apart. Not in this video. I wanna pick that apart. I
No,
wanna
right, because it's
talk
going on.
about how
Yeah.
important it is to in that detail, to not get lost and confused in that
Mhm.
about what's what, I think is super critical for all of us. That's an examination that we should be doing. So let's do that
Yep.
in another video. But for
Yeah,
right
let's
now,
do
is
that.
there anything you wanna say about allodial title before we close today?
Just that I would love to hear from people about this topic, like, where are people at with it? What are your concerns?
Mm,
Um, I feel like, especially here in the East, it's much more difficult because the records go back farther. So you have to go back a lot farther, whereby in California, there's something called it's a land office. They use land, so there's a difference between land grant and I'm not really sure. I'm not sure the terminology that affects people out west, but there is a quasi-government office that has the records, and so people that want to claim allodial title on the
mhm,
western side of the country have a much easier time because the records are there. Whereby
mhm,
we here on the east side, because we go back several hundred years prior, you have to have a larger compilation of your chain, and which going all the way back to that original grant, which we need to get an actual physical copy of so that we can detail that. And so it's much harder for us, and I feel like this is something that we can all work together because, hey, like I said, that one piece of information, that will be a common that will be the original for all of us.
mhm.
And so if we can share information, that's great. That'll help. We will be helping each other. And this is one thing that really, like, we have struggled in our little group that's working on this for ourselves. We've struggled because we've gotten as far as we can. And now, okay, now we have to get in the car and take a trip. And we don't really know what we're doing. So anybody that has expertise in that would talk to
Oh,
us
hi,
and
yeah.
work with us. Yeah.
Anybody on
So you know
another
what I'm saying? We
yes, yes.
collaboration.
Anybody on another state that might have a little bit more information that would be helpful for Ken's and I. And
Yeah.
for our state, for Massachusetts to do a little bit like where is it kept on your state? Where have you found that it's been kept? That would be helpful
Yeah.
for us. The other thing that I
Right.
started to say earlier that I just wanted the thought that I want to finish is that when it feels most frustrating to work with i- to work in the third dimension, um, in figuring out separating the de jure from the de facto and what you need to do to secure yourself and to be present. It's super helpful
Mhm.
to, this is where prayer comes in. This is where your belief in
Yeah.
something larger and a spirit of connection and something and love. That's right. Having your heart and your mind and your spirit firmly rooted in knowing that we're held, in knowing that we're being guided, in knowing because autonomy, freedom, and love is unity, right? That is the spirit of where we're moving. That's the progression of the time period that we're moving through now. And so belief in that, reliance on that when you're feeling frustrated can help open a path. And if you end up getting bogged down by the frustration that the de facto has, the blocks that they keep putting in place, and that they keep figuring out. It's a tactic. Again, right? Again, this is a tactic that's been used over and over and over again in comprehending that we are more resilient, that we are smarter, and that we have love and faith and God on our side, really, the one true
Yeah,
God
we do.
on our side.
Mhm.
That is the intelligent energy of the universe, because the intelligent
Mhm.
energy of the universe functions in order, not in chaos. it functions in order, and it functions knowing that you're connected. That's how the path gets opened, not by having to take things away from other people, not by being stingy and being mean and being
Mhm.
and hoarding, but truly by being open,
Yep,
comprehending, moving forward, and asking for help when you're most frustrated. So I hope that this
yep.
video has been helpful to people. And please do ask questions in the comments, and we're happy to answer anything. And do like and share our videos, please.
Yes,
Thank
thanks.
you so much for your
Thank
time.
you.
Again, I hope it's been helpful. Thanks so much, Kens. I'm going to
Thank
stop the
you.
recording.
Alright.